Thank you so much for being a part of our study in Deuteronomy. Today we're in chapter 6, and tomorrow we're going to talk about what Rudy and I have just been talking about, and that is putting the Lord to the test. Before we get there, we want to talk about two things. And one is the admonition not to forget what God has done for us, and two, a reminder about the fear of the Lord. So in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 10, when the Lord your God brought you into the land he swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, and it's a land that's filled with all sorts of good stuff that I'm going to forget. But it says, and when you've eaten your fill, take care that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of slavery. The Lord your God, you shall fear him, you shall serve, and by his name alone you shall swear. Do not follow the other gods of the people. The Lord is a jealous God. So let's just stop for a moment. And by the way, I've read sort of pieces of verses 10 through 15 and skip some for time's sake. So when we have become prosperous, don't forget the Lord. What's the danger in becoming prosperous and forgetting God?
Well, we start trusting in what we have accumulated without understanding that every decision that we made along that line that was good for a particular outcome wasn't ours. And pride gets into this, and actually pride is probably the deadliest of all sins.
Right.
So when we begin to think that we did it, we have to understand immediately that we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
We need to be thankful for what we have and know who we're thankful to. What do you think?
Well, I agree. Again, I read Peter Craigie. He has written a book on Deuteronomy. He points out over and over that to forget the Lord is the next step is disobedience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When we forget the Lord, then the next thing we do is we don't follow the Lord, and we're following our own will. And you're right, pride. I did this. I accomplished this. I don't need God. And
I'm really familiar with this because I do this more than once a day, and but even knowing how dangerous that thought process is, you still slide into it.
Absolutely. I'm just absolutely as guilty as you, if not more so. And so, here's the deal. This is, Rudy and I also talked about this just a moment ago while we were drinking some coffee. These are not just antique statements to get a nice history lesson from an old book in the Bible. These are eternal principles. And I may say this many times as we do these videos this week. These principles are real. And so if we forget the Lord and we disobey the Lord, we're in trouble.
Well, even in yesterday or the day before's YouTube, we talked about the three voices in your head, and this goes right at the three voices in your head, because your voice in your head is just as deadly as Satan's voice in your head.
Nice word.
And I think sometimes he just presses our easy button,
right.
And it's like, oh, you did this, you did a really good job,
right.
You don't really owe this to anybody, nobody really helped you.
Right.
But the antidote for that is being thankful.
Right. So the contrast here is to live in the fear of the Lord. Let's wrap our heart around that again. So fear of the Lord is?
The fear of the Lord, basically, if you were to look at Deuteronomy, the fear of the Lord is to remember what he did to the Egyptians, and remember the plagues, remember the opening of the sea, remember the fire on the mountain, and basically you need to be in fear of this one's power, the Lord. He doesn't want to overwhelm fear, but fear is really the threshold for understanding and then leading to love.
Right. Just a corollary. When I was in college, I had a economics professor who was one of President Eisenhower's economic advisors. And he was this little old guy. He and his wife had moved to Arkansas to raise chickens. So she stayed in Arkansas as a chicken farmer, and he came to Southeast Missouri to teach economics. And I was scared to death of the guy. He was so intimidated. He was a little guy, but I was intimidated by him. And yet it was the intimidation of this man's knowledge and wisdom was a creative place for me to learn. I got an A in his class out of his kindness because he graded on the curve. And yet I became an economics minor because of that one class. Well, that's a little tiny example of if we are intimidated by God, if we are in awe of God, it makes a creative place to learn from God. And if I could dismiss God and say, God and I have a deal, he likes to forgive, I like to sin, then we're not going to learn from him.
Right, and it's really, you try to think of some really intelligent way to broach this. Right. But it's not any harder than that. Right. You just remember his power. Right. The thing is, for us today, this is not something that is not in the psychology of humanity. I mean, this is a psychological problem, and free will actually is the cause that allows this problem to foster. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to understand what his will is over against ours, because ours always seems like it's the right thing. Yes. But it rarely is. Right. Once in a while we get lucky because we had a thought that was parallel to what God would want us to do, and we mistake it for a good idea. You got it. And so as we end this up, he says, this is for our lasting good, to keep us alive. So to be in awe of God, to learn from God, to remember what God's done for us. You gave a great list of things. To do that is for our good. And it will cause us to stay alive. And again, part of the memory of what God did in Egypt moves forward into the Passion Week. Right. No mistaking that this is the red letter event of history so far. And it happened in the exact same time frame, matching up with what happened to the children of Israel 1,500 years before. That's it. And I don't think that you can discount that at all. Not at all. Hey, thanks for being a part. Rudy, thank you for taking your day off to be with me and to record these videos. And we're going to be back tomorrow talking about how people tested God and what God has to say about that. So look forward to seeing you. God bless you. Have a great day.